Like many scientists, I am sometimes asked if I believe in God and life after death. I say at once that I do not believe in God. I don't believe in the image created by people, in which God sits on some cloud at some distance from the earth and looks at the world. We have instruments that can look into the most distant corners of our universe. But no one in them has ever recorded the God described. For the same reason, I do not believe in life after death. Because none of the deceased has ever been resurrected and told what happened to him. Although I have seen a strange thing involving stories of another world. I will remember about it all my life, admitted candidate of technical sciences G.Gray. Halfway through his life, this scientist encountered a situation that cannot be explained scientifically. It was this situation that made the scientist think about life after death and whether there is a creator of our world. G.Gray told about his thoughts about these questions in one interview. This story happened a few years after my wife died. That day I went to the market for some reason. Imagine my surprise when, near one of the stalls, I saw my late wife among the passers-by. I was so amazed that I could not move for a while. The body became as if it was not mine. And at that time my deader wife was talking to the salesman as if nothing had happened. G.Gray told about such a strange meeting. The scientist did not dare to approach his wife at once. He decided to observe her and make sure that he was not mistaken. G.Gray followed the woman, becoming more and more convinced of his hunch. Her face, voice, and even her movements were the same as his wife's. Having made her purchases, the woman whom G.Gray was watching went to the bus stop. The scientist followed her. Soon a trolleybus pulled up to the stop. The woman got into it. G.Gray did not hesitate and got in after her. The scientist sat down beside the woman and immediately started a conversation. "Excuse me, for God's sake. I have the feeling that we have met somewhere before," began G.Gray. The scientist decided not to tell the stranger that she bore a striking resemblance to his dead wife. He asked her where she lived and what she did for a living. It turned out that this woman had been born and lived all her life in Leningrad. At that time this city was still officially called that. But my dead wife was from Siberia. And this woman had never been to Siberia. I was struck by another fact. My new acquaintance told me that she was a chemist by training. My wife was also a rare earths chemist. The woman I mistook for my wife told me that she had come to this city on a business trip. Today she was going to fly back to Leningrad, G.Gray told me. Now that they already knew a little about each other, G.Gray told the woman why he had decided to talk to her. He told her about his dead wife and their remarkable resemblance. G.Gray's interlocutor became interested, and she asked him to show her a photo of the deceased. But the scientist did not have a photograph with him. So he offered his new acquaintance to bring the photograph to her hotel. In response, the woman told me that she was flying home in a few hours. She needed to finish her business. She had no time to meet me. I left her phone number. We agreed that when she flew back to my city, she would call me. Many years have passed since that meeting, but the call never came. For a long time, this incident has been on my mind. Imagine meeting my dead wife on the street. Even now, when I talk about it, it makes me uncomfortable. As a scientist, I wanted to find an explanation of how it is possible that in our world you can meet a copy of another person. When my emotions after this encounter had subsided a little, I began to analyze the situation. I had to admit that my new acquaintance, despite the striking resemblance to my deceased wife, had one difference in her appearance that I noticed. The shape of my wife's ears was slightly different. It is a known fact that there are no people in the entire world who have exactly the same ears. Minor differences will still be present. That's why this part of the body can be called our second passport, G.Gray remarked. Then how can such a striking similarity in appearance be explained? The scientist was convinced that there are many people in the world who are copies of each other with small errors. The scientist called such people doppelgangers. At the same time, such identical people can live in completely different places on Earth. People who are related to one or another faith say that after death the soul separates from the body and flies somewhere. I don't believe that. In my opinion, when a person dies, information is separated from him, say, in the form of electromagnetic waves or some other waves that we do not know about yet. This information returns to the place where it was stored before the person was born, in some information sphere. I think that such a sphere exists, and for this reason in our world are born people who are external copies of those people who lived 200, 300 and so on years ago. This opinion was voiced by G.Gray. According to the scientist, this information, which determines the appearance of a person, can be stored in some information sphere all the time in the form of a set of certain characteristics and sent to Earth in the form of radiation. That is why doppelgangers in our world can appear at the same time. By the way, by the same principle the scientist explained how inventions are born in our world. How does it happen that a person invents something? As the author of more than a dozen inventions, I can say that the ability to create something new was not inherited. My parents were completely ordinary people. I am convinced that at some distance from the Earth there is some sphere in which all knowledge about our universe is stored. All this knowledge is stored on some kind of energy medium. Perhaps this carrier is organized on the principle of our mind, but at the same time it is much more complex than it. And we can take information from there with the help of our thoughts. G.Gray explained that the movement of human thought is much higher than the speed of light. Therefore, in a short time our thoughts can spread to unusually large distances. G.Gray believed that our thought also represents some kind of radiation. And under certain conditions it can reach the information center where all knowledge about our universe is stored. At this moment, a person has an epiphany and will come up with something that has not yet existed in our world. G.Gray said that he does not believe in God. But at the same time he specified that he did not believe in that God, whose image was created in religions. The scientist said that he often did not see this faith in the ministers of the church either. However, in the reasoning of G.Gray repeatedly repeats the idea that there is something higher above us, something more reasonable than man. Probably that is why many people who have watched the interview with the scientist believe that G.Gray is much closer to God in his reflections than he thinks.